Hi everyone, I'm Izzy at Minerva. In today's video we're looking at how to fit this beautiful Minerva exclusive blouse together. I'm going to look at the common fit alterations, how to pick your size, and also how to grade between sizes. In addition, we're going to look at a couple of common fit adjustments, how to lengthen and shorten the pattern, and also how to look at the shoulder alignment and look at that and assess that and get that looking good. So this is the lovely Victoria blouse. As you can see, there is quite a lot of ease in the pattern already. So in terms of fitting the pattern, it's not like super duper fitted. It has a really nice flowing look to it. It's got a really nice gentle V crossover and the sleeves are just grown on. So a really lovely, simple pattern to look at and use. Now our lovely sample here has been sewn using our Minerva exclusive dynamic brushstrokes cotton sateen. We'll tag that fabric below the video so you can easily find it on our website. This video just looks at how to fit the Victoria blouse. If you would like to have more information about what type of fabric you could use for this beautiful pattern, we have another film on our YouTube channel which talks you through all like our sort of top picks for fabric for this pattern, so do check that out. And as well as all the instructions that are beautifully listed out in this booklet, if you want some further advice and support with sewing the pattern, we've also got a lovely sew along on our YouTube channel for you to follow there too. For this pattern, we need 4 body measurements. Our first one is our high bust measurement. So grab your tape measure, pop it around the top of your bust up here, underneath your arms, nice and snug, and it should be in a reasonably straight line around your back, like that. Just make sure that you can fit 2 fingers between your body and the tape measure. Big breath in and out again and take that reading. Our next measurement is around our full bust. So this is the widest part of our bust as it goes around our body, making sure again the tape measure is nice and straight around the back and that you can fit 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure. Take a big breath in, hand out, and then take that reading. For your waist measurement, you want to find the point between your bust and your hip bone. That is where the break of your body is. So basically, if you put your hands on just above your hips, bend to one side, you should feel where the natural break of your body is at that point. It's often higher than our trousers, as you can see on me today. It is just a little bit higher than how we often wear our clothes. So don't be put off by that. It is higher than you might think. So just find out where that break is. Put 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure, big breath in and out again. And there we have it. For our hip measurement, we want to put the tape measure around our widest part from our waist down to the floor. Most people, our hip measurement will be about 20 centimeters below our natural waist. This is a straight measurement that should just go straight all the way round. And when you take it, you want to make sure that you can wiggle that tape measure up and down over your body, nice and snug at your widest part. So have a little play around with where you think that is, and then take a nice measurement all the way around. So the instruction booklet has some really helpful information about sizing. The first thing you'll notice is that the pattern comes in 2 different size charts. So we've got the Mrs, which is size A to J, and it has a pattern cup size B. And then we've got the larger size, which is sizes K to T, which accommodate a larger bust size, which is a cup size D. Now that relates to the difference, so the B cup and the D cup relate to the difference between the high bust and the full bust. If you go to the previous page here, there's a little section all about understanding bust cup sizes. And what it shows you here is that the B cup allows and accommodates for a 5 centimeter level change between the high bust and the full bust, whereas the D cup for the larger pattern sizes allows a difference between the high bust and the full bust of 10 centimeters. So this is a really nice size inclusive pattern, and it's just worth taking a little bit of time to just take a look at exactly what size we need based on our body measurements. We are not expecting that everyone will just miraculously fall into one size because our bodies are all different shapes, we've got different proportions, we are taller and shorter. In addition to the pattern cup sizes B and D, you'll also notice that both of the patterns are designed for someone who's 5'6". So that is another change that we're going to look at when we lengthen and shorten the pattern. If you're taller or smaller than that, I can show you how to adjust the pattern to fit you beautifully. So we have an example of body measurements here. The hip is 125. So on this size chart, I'm looking for 125, or the box that is nearest to 125. It's not fitting into the Mrs. size. So moving up to the larger size, I can see it's fitting closest to box N. It's closer to 127 than it is to 121.9 centimetres. My next measurement is my waist. It's 101. So 101 is closer, it's in between M and N, and it is closer to M. So I'm going to choose that size for my waist. And then we've got the high bust, which is 98 centimetres. And the full bust, which is 111. So I'm fitting into the L category at this point, working more importantly with my high bust. That's the critical measurement here. I want to definitely make sure I'm cutting out something that fits my high bust, because that's where the proportion of the shoulders and how the shoulders are going to fit well, that's where that measurement comes from. So for that, my body measurement is 98, and so it's very close to L, which is just 99 centimetres, there or thereabouts. And you'll notice the difference between my full bust and high bust is 13 centimetres, which means I can comfortably just fit in to cutting out the standard L around the bust. Great, let's talk about how to grade between sizes next, because what we've got here on our pattern size is we've actually got to cut out 3 different pattern sizes: bust L, waist M, and hips N. Let's do that now. As you look at your pattern chart, you'll see the body measurements are here, but the fitted garment measurements are also here. So you can see in your fitted garment measurements that actually the hip on the N is actually, the ease is quite significant, because the hip is 150.9 centimetres wide. That's how much volume the garment's going to give you at the hips. So you can see on the garment here, we have got a lot of volume around by the hips, right down at the bottom, which is around here at this point. So you can see that it is very full of ease. Let's take a look at the waist next. So on the size chart here, the waist for us is fitting into 101, that's our measurement here, but actually the M measurement for the waist shows that we've got 142.9, so almost 143 centimetres. So again, that's almost 40 centimetres of ease that we have around the waist, you know, at this point. So that's really helpful to know. You can see we've got a lot of ease. And then let's take a look at the bust measurement up here. The bust, we've got 134.6 centimetres, but our bust is only 111. So once again, up round by the bust, you can actually see from the pattern how much ease we've got there. It's quite a lot, isn't there? So basically what I'm trying to demo here is the fact that the garment has a lot of natural ease. So you may well want to size down depending on how tight and how fitted a garment you want, but it has been designed to have a really lovely flowing aesthetic. So it's not designed to be super tight. You can see that on the sample here, but you can also really clearly see it in this picture on page 7. You can see the little person shape underneath the design. So here, if I just sort of sketch over her arm and down to her side, you can see that there is a lot of ease in this area between the end of the pattern and the beginning of the body. So you have got a lot of ease. Again, a bit more snug around the hips, but it's just a nice straight fit all the way up. I'm going to start looking at grading by looking at the front bodice piece in quite a lot of detail. We'll then just skim past the other ones once you've got your reference points and the technique sorted. So the first thing we need to know is where our bust, waist and hips are on this particular pattern. So this notch here is going to be our waist notch. Our hips are about 20 centimetres below that. So around here is going to be where our hips are located. And then our bust really does just sort of sit underneath the arm side at this point. So the bust is somewhere around here underneath the arm side. So we're just going to mark this as our bust. We have got a little notch here, which is also a helpful sort of marker point for our bust. Now, because of the way the pattern's been drafted, if you take a little look at it, you can actually see that that underarm notch does line up with where the bust is on the model here. So you can see that the arm size has been dropped quite a lot, quite significantly in this case, just to accommodate a nice amount of ease in that area. So once I know where my bust, waist and hips are on the pattern piece, I'm then just going to trace around them using a colourful pen. I find this really helpful because it gets quite confusing sometimes which line to follow. So if we look at the pattern over here, it's all sort of cut on one line up to the neck point up here. For us, we're following L, which is the second one in, and it's the long dashed line. So up here, I'm just going to follow that line down, which is L, all the way down. And then I'm going to continue to follow it across because this is my bust size measurement that I'm looking at here. And of course, anything above my bust is going to be cut using my bust size. Okay, so my bust is the L. I've traced all the way around it. The next measurement is my waist, which is going to be the M. So looking at the size chart here, M is this little dashed line here. So that's where I need to grade to next. Basically, all I want to do is to join those two up, but we have got a bit of a curve, haven't we? So really, my new drafted line sort of wants to cut in between the two. So I'm just going to draw a little dashed line to start off with, which joins up those two lines from my waist up to my bust. What I quite like about this is that that curve can then just continue along the bust line and I can just straighten that off down to the waist. Great. Our hip measurement for this particular scenario, we're going to grade up to a size N, which is the next one up. So around here, this is where we want to be at the next size up. So again, it's just a straight line really between the two. And then you can just continue to follow that down, following your standard pattern and then across. Now it really is as simple as that. What you're trying to achieve is sort of a smooth, soft curves and a soft joining between the bust, waist and hips when you're grading between those points. As a quick summary for the rest of the pieces, piece A is the neckline facing, so it will be cut on the bust size. Pattern piece C, the neck bias should be cut on the bust size. Looking at the next sheet now, pattern piece E is the sleeve band, so that's bust size because it's above the bust, that's where the cut will be. And then finally, pattern piece D is going to be graded in the same way that you graded the front. So on this one, we have our bust notch here, our waist notch is here, and our hip line sits approximately 20 centimetres below the waist. And so that is how you grade your pattern pieces. Depending on your height, you may want to lengthen or shorten your pattern piece. You may want to do this if you're taller or shorter than the pattern has been drafted for. So it's been drafted for someone who is 5'6" tall, which is approximately 167 centimetres. So if you are significantly like, I don't know, 3 or 4 centimetres taller than that or shorter than that, you will probably want to do this alteration. Draw a line that runs perpendicular to your grain line and also to your centre front here, starting at your waist notch. Cut along that line. At this point, we're just going to break the two pattern pieces apart. Now, if we pull this bottom piece down, we can lengthen how long the pattern piece is without compromising the hem. Or if we push the pattern piece up like this, we can shorten it, again not compromising the design style of the hem and also just keeping everything sort of in line with each other. Okay, so if I want to shorten the pattern piece, all I'm going to do is, say I want to shorten it by 4 centimetres, just going to draw a line that it runs parallel to my cut line and it's going to be at 4 centimetres offset from my cut line. And I'm raising it all up. Then just line your pattern piece up, bring it up, and just line it up beautifully and stick it down. If you want to lengthen the pattern piece, you're going to need to grab another extra little piece of paper, pop that underneath your cut line, and then let's say we want to lengthen it by 4 centimetres. We're going to grab our pattern drafting ruler and draw a line that is 4 centimetres below our cut line. Then just extend the grain line so you've got a nice reference, and then you can just pop your pattern piece and line it up right on your new drawn line and stick it down. And what that's done is then lengthened the whole of the pattern piece. And so that's how you lengthen and shorten your pattern piece. Obviously, whatever you've done for your front, because we've lengthened, the front of it, we then need to duplicate whatever we did to the front on the back in exactly the same place. So pattern piece D is in front of me here now. And I would just do exactly the same using your waist notch as a reference. What we're very simply going to do would just be to line up our ruler with the waist, draw in your cut line there, so the line runs perpendicular to the centre back. You then cut and extend it out as you need to. And that really is how you lengthen or shorten this particular Victoria blouse. One small common adjustment for the Victoria blouse, which is just going to help your blouse sit really nicely on you and look really nicely fitted, is that we may need to alter the shoulder seam. So let's take a look at that together. We want our shoulder seam to sit at the top of the curve of our shoulder. So on the mannequin here, this is where we want it to sit. You can obviously see that she has a nice little line there, which helps us understand exactly where the top of our shoulder is. For us, as we're looking at it, it should just be the top of the curve of the shoulder. So quite simple, you should be able to see that and you should be able to pin that along your garment. So if you feel like the seams are sort of coming forward of the curve of your shoulder, or if you think this seam is sitting too far back on you, let's take a look at how we make that really nice simple adjustment. Okay, so for this example, I'm going to assume that the shoulder seam is just sitting too far back, away from our natural point and top of our shoulder. So for me, and you can do this at home, you might need to ask someone to help you, all you really need to do is just pin along the location when you're wearing the garment where you want your shoulder seam to be on the pattern. Let's go back and take a look at the pattern pieces and see what this alteration means. Because this pattern piece already has a seam allowance, I want us just first of all to take off the seam allowance, as in just to mark it on the pattern piece where the seam allowance is. So for the shoulder line, it's as shown, and the neckline as shown. Now, if you're doing this at home, do use a nice sharp pencil rather than using a Sharpie like I'm doing. I'm just trying to use a fat marker pen so you can see on the screen above. So I've pinned where my change is happening and where I want this seam line to sort of rotate to. Now you'll notice that it's a bit of an angle. It looked okay by the time it hit the top of the shoulder in this particular scenario. It's just that it needed to come a little bit more forward on the neckline to hit the neck where it needed to. On this scenario, what we've done is we've shown where we want our new shoulder line to go. You'll notice that it needs to dip down round by the neckline, but by the time it hits this point up here, which is the shoulder line where that notch is, it's okay and the rest of it's sitting really nicely. So let's take a look at what that means. We've drawn in our seam allowance because that is the stitch line that we end up seeing. So that's the easiest one to mark from. So first of all, what I want us to do is just to mark and measure the distance between the seam line and the end of your pins at that point. For me, it's 2 centimetres. So what I basically want to draw is to draw the pin line onto my pattern piece. Next, I'm just going to measure the length of that line. It's about 14 centimetres. And then I'm going to measure that distance along here. It takes me up to about 14 centimetres. So by the time I get to here, I'm happy for my new seam line to be lining up with my seam line on the pattern piece. I can then just join those 2 lines up together with a nice straight line. And you can see that that now becomes my new shoulder line, which is exactly the same as the one that I've pinned out here. All I would do then is literally just mark in the new seam allowance and then trim my pattern piece down, removing the excess. Now, depending on how sharp a junction you have there, you might just want to sort of soften it off a little bit, just to make it feel a little bit more unified. Okay, so we've made the change to the front, but we don't want to be removing any fabric. We want to keep the amount of fabric we've got happening over our shoulders. So let's look at the back next. Great, our back pattern piece is here. If we take a look at the shoulder seam here, what we basically want to do is we want to add this little strip of fabric to the back of our pattern piece. Now, in very, very simple terms, we could literally just stick that piece onto the back here, and that adds in the extra volume that we just took out of the front. Because that wedge is exactly the same as the amount that we've taken out of the pattern piece here, if we take off the seam allowance as well. Now the only thing about this neckline is it now looks a little bit exaggerated. If you've got a bit of a point there, you might just want to smooth that off a little bit so it's a bit of a softer curve, so that it kind of comes round to that point a little bit more. It's up to you. Just take a look at the view of that. Brilliant. So that's the back. But let's not forget that we've also got a facing to deal with on the inside. So let's take a look at those two pattern pieces next. Okay, so this pattern piece, which is our front neck facing, sits on this front pattern piece here. They literally line up nice and neatly at this point, and then it's all sewn together. So you can see that one simply, very simply, just overlaps over the other. So all we need to do is very simply just trace in our new cut line for our facing at this point. And then this line will then match up perfectly with our new seam line. So let's cut that out now. Now this pattern piece here, which is our back neck facing, it's just one big rectangle and we're only going to cut one of them. So what we do need to do now is actually just to add a little bit of length to that because it's got to continue round to the front. So let's take our shoulder that we lengthened, and really it's this bit down here that I'm interested in because this is where the seam is and that's where it's going to match in with our neck bias binding. So I'm very simply just going to pop this down here and draw a line at the widest point. Take that little piece away and I've lengthened it by the amount that I need to come all the way around the front. I'm just going to repeat that process on the other side and then just cut out your new pattern piece. Brilliant. So what we took off from the front facing, we then added into the back on both sides. We've done it on both sides because it's just cut, because we only had to cut one. Excellent. So that's your shoulder adjustment realigned and sorted out so that it sits really nicely on you. Wonderful. So that wraps up our Victoria Blouse fit video, how to get the perfect fit for this pattern. I cannot wait to see all the different versions that you are sewing and creating. Don't forget you can create a lovely free Minerva account on our website where you can upload your photos and share your makes with us. We love to see those popping up on our screens. So thanks for joining me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva and I'll see you next time.